Good morning. My name is Herman Grech. I'm the online editor of the Times of Malta. I must admit, when I got a phone call from the organizers about 2 months ago, asking me to be fielding questions to one of the world's top automobile experts, I said, you've got the wrong guy. My knowledge of motoring does not go beyond changing my spare wheel, and I sometimes get it wrong. So he told me, don't worry, it's going to be about disruption, startups, you know how to field some questions there. Until I read an interview with Ulrich Bez last Sunday, and the Sunday Times, where I'm going to quote this. You said you're not sure if disruption is in the best interest of the human species. And here we are kicking off a conference about the importance of disruption. How do you explain that?
Yeah, look, disruption for me is a buzzword. Disruption has always happened. I could say in Aston Martin, 15 years ago, we had a disruption when we came from a cottage industry to a luxury brand. So disruption in a sense of evolution, of development, always happens. And I don't see that there is now whatever a revolutionary development. It's just a buzzword.
So what you're saying, it's always been there. It's just a matter that maybe today's generation is trying to seek buzzwords. Is it simple as that?
Of course, it comes from this, that everything is digitized in the last few years, but everything what has happened before 10 or 20 years and is not digitized is forgotten. And this is why the generation today feels it's now the greatest revolution, the greatest thing in Earth, because they don't see what has happened in 20, 30, 40, 50, 500 years ago.
Okay, so it's always been around. You'd often talk about history. I read some of your interviews. You place a lot of importance about history, companies with legacies. But given the nature, startups, and there are quite a few people here, getting into the business, by their very nature, startups have no history. So are you saying they start at a competitive financial disadvantage?
No, I think a startup is a startup, and a startup, of course, has no history. But a startup, if it wants to be successful, it has to develop a brand value. And I would use an Apple as an example. Apple at some time was a startup which was struggling somehow, but in the moment they could create over the years a brand value. They can now charge for their phones just additional 20-30% of just for the brand and for the value. And each startup should create at some stage a brand value. And this is then what I mean with the history.
Let's look at some of the developments happening in the automotive industry. I'd like to quote something which was printed in Forbes magazine recently, which said, the electrification of vehicles, the advancements of sensor electrical architecture, artificial intelligence, algorithms, mobility business models, machine learning, and self-driving cars are not only disrupting the conventional ecosystem of the automotive industry, but it's slowly and surely making it obsolete. It's a very strong word, obsolete.
That's a very strong word, and if you allow me, I reply with a strong word, it's bullshit.
It's bullshit. Why is it bullshit, if I may?
Because all the physics and the needs of automobility, of being able to drive at any time, at any place in the world, is not possible with what is discussed in electromobility. It's only possible with the combination of various systems and various things. And if we look at the future, we may be able to look 50 years ahead. I am used to look 20 to 30 years ahead, and I still, even if I'm no more a spring chicken, I'm still looking 30, 40 years ahead. But we cannot look 50, 100 years or more, and there might be something in 100 years, but we have had in the past, we had so many fantasies about transportation, about autos. We had nuclear-powered cars in 1958, which didn't come through. So I want to be a little bit realistic in my realism, based on the speed of the development, and in the next 20, 30 years, we're not going to see this.
And so we will not be seeing the immediate revolutions that some of the car experts themselves are saying.
Yeah, but I'm more grounded. There is no revolution in the car business since 100 years, since the cars are there. A car has 4 wheels, an engine, a seat, and a steering wheel, and everything else are just add-ons. And since 6,000 years, the wheel is round, and there's no invention to a wheel. So it will be evolutionary. It will be adapted. There we will have a traffic which is controlled from outside, from the government. So you will not be able to speed anymore and do these things. So there will be in some ways a big change in what you can do in the field. So it will be a very strong impact to the freedom of movement. But
let's face it, there are a lot of technology companies that are seeking to break into the automobile market now. Are the established companies capable of fighting this competition, or maybe adapting to these new technologies? Because they have to ultimately. They might not take over, as you're saying.
I do believe this. 25 years ago, we have in Germany, we have a 1-year field test of electric cars with lots of companies involved. We had a learning 25 years ago about these things, but we tend to forget all of this what we have done here. So I have always been in the car industry on a research side, an advanced side, and looking forward. So, but what you see is, of course, the deal breakers which are behind something. And of course, I understand that there are people who want to bring their stuff to a big success, but we must be realistic about this.
As you know, there is clearly a move towards electric cars. Our own Prime Minister in Malta last week said there's going to be the start of a consultation process on setting a cut-off date beyond which all new car purchases would have to be electric or similar vehicles. This is not new. Countries like Great Britain said they're going to be weeding out all new petrol cars and diesel cars by 2040. Can there be such a revolution?
I think politics is politics, and politics in a lot of countries, they have to do what they think, what they can sell best to be re-elected. But they are not necessarily based on facts and on.
But this is not going to get them re-elected. I mean, last night I had a friend of mine asking whether she should buy a petrol car because they're going to be phased out.
Right, but look, when a big country like Germany, Angela Merkel, when in England, when China, which is the big threat to the European business, when they say, "Oh, we're gonna close all the combustion engines," then okay, what are you doing? You follow this. You follow this mainstream. You do not rise the kite against the wind, which makes you go up. So this is what politics is doing, but they will realize, as they have realized in Norway, that if the number of electric cars gets a several high, it can't be, we cannot cope anymore with it. I have calculated the 500 charging points in Malta with the electric population. At the very end, you will have 2 minutes charging a day for the cars. It will not
charge an electric car every day.
2 minutes. It will not get you anywhere. So it will be a combination. There is a place for electric cars, maybe in Valletta, in a center. There is for commuting from A to B. There is a sense, but we have alternatives. We have hydrogen. We have ethylene, and the combustion engine itself is not the bad thing. It is the gasoline and the diesel, and it is the power which is developed, which makes the emission. It's not the engine. It's not the hardware of this.
So what you're saying is that we should start looking at alternatives like a hydrogen engine, and really we would have electric cars, but they will be in limited supply.
Yes. We produce today about 85 million cars a year, and it will go up to 90, maybe to 100, if the confidence of customer comes back in this field. Then we will have, if we have 30% electric car, this is still 30 million cars a year, which has to be refueled, recharged, and you have to cope with this. With the investment, electric car will have a lifetime of probably 6 or 7 years. You know this from your iPhone. iPhones. Your iPhones, they have a life cycle of 2 years maximum. Then you change it. You don't realize that the batteries go down. You don't realize that the software doesn't work anymore with the new updates and all of those things. And this will happen with the electric cars. And therefore, as an investment, this electric car will be more to smaller cars, to city sites, to commuter cars, to car sharings and all of those, and not taking the whole mobility.
If I had to localize this discussion, have you asked probably most of the people in this room what the biggest problem in Malta is? Most will tell you it's a traffic problem. You've been here for a week. You've seen the chaos out there. Sometimes it verges on the anarchy. If we had to think outside the box and to try to start resolving our traffic problems, what would you advise the government? I know you met the Prime Minister already.
Yes, I have been with the Prime Minister, and I have a few ideas which goes a little bit too far to talk about this, but there is one major thing. It's a chaos starting from Valletta and going over, and in the next week it should be even more a chaos. So we have to develop a chaos management system. So what I would suggest to have a system where everybody links into, and where the whole traffic is guided and controlled to the maximum or the minimum of traffic time or of driving time you are there, the maximum or the minimum in emissions and in consumption which are there, and I think this is possible. You would need to have some of the devices in each of the cars. You would have an input of the where you want to go, and then you are guided to the best way. And this is possible for 350,000 cars. So we are able today from the performance of the processors that we can process this, and this is what I would do.
So you're saying there could be a role for startups, small startups, to try to get into this chaos, to try to resolve some of our traffic problems.
This is definitely something where a startup could come, because a chaos management is something we did not have that much in the past, so this is a new field, and to do something there could be very beneficial for a lot of things, not only for the traffic here.
Do you think we should start looking at even reducing the size of the cars for a small island like this?
Very, very, very clear. The size of the cars has developed in the last 50 years dramatically. The space for the cars have increased dramatically, and therefore the throughput, because the roads have not been wider, space is not grown in the world. Space is always the same. I would go and although I'm saying there's a space pollution, because CO2, NOx, that goes away at some stage, but the space is always covered. We should have a text on the footprint of a car and not on the displacement, because a car which is not driving is not polluting, but if it stands there, it's still a pollution, it's a space pollution, and you have to address, the government has to address the space pollution in the island.
Final two questions, even though I've been given less time than
I see this. It's very nice to have this in front, so I have to speak very fast.
You're known as Mr. Aston Martin. You managed to transform it into the so-called cool brand we know. I mean, how important is the cool factor, especially as you're starting off?
I mean, the cool factor, to be stylish, to be honest, to be authentic, to be personal, to be a quality, to be loved, is very important, and is very important if you see the competition we were in. We were competing with Apple, we were competing with Ferrari, with all the car brands, with everything what was there. And if you are selected from a group of people here as the cool brand ahead of Apple and others, that has something. It gives you, it's not measurable in percentages, but it's something very important that you are seen as something special, as something exclusive, and this is important for a luxury.
Aston Martin has been connected with James Bond for several years, until there was a divorce, but now they've made up again. Is it the hero that needs Aston Martin, or is it Aston Martin that needs the hero of James Bond?
We have a love affair, and in a love affair, both sides need each other. So we need James Bond, and James Bond needs us. And this is even rational, because at the moment Aston Martin represents the best of British, Bond represents the best of British. He will use Aston Martin, and he will be with Aston Martin. If Aston Martin, it sometimes is not the best of British, he will using BMW or any other brand. So in the last year, since I have been involved, we have started with a Vanquish. I myself could feature a little bit in Quantum of Solace, so because we love each other, and so it's a love affair.
Is it important for, final question, is it important for anybody starting off, the small companies, the startups, to try to seek collaborations with more established companies or brands?
In some ways, I considered Aston Martin in the year 2000 as a very, very small company. We had times when we made 40 cars a year. When we made 600 in 2000 and 7,000 in 2007. So it was a small company. But of course, you have the roots in the history. You look at those things, but then you build something really new and in the future. So this is how I would see this with a small company.
Dr. Ulrich Bez, thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.